My milkshake brings all the boys to the yard. Damn right, it's better than yours, I teach you, but I'd have to charge. Boom, ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. Alright, so on the way home from work today, I hit a 7-Eleven up, and there was a tweaker outside of it, and I kid you not, I'm walking in the store, and he says, hey, I don't know if you're interested, but I have an airbrush for sale. And I said, oh, I'm sorry, I don't have any cash on me. And I started walking in the store. And I stopped. I turned around and I said, what kind of airbrush? And he, out of his bag, and he says, oh, it's like a $400 airbrush. And I'm like, yeah, I doubt it. So anyway, I got online and I got home and it's $75, $80. So I found it as cheap as $64. But here's the catch. It's filled with paint. Like in true crackhead form, he filled it with paint and then put it back in the box. Luckily the paint's still wet. So I went to open up the jar, I unscrewed it and I just dumped paint all over myself. I'm like, who does that? Who fill it? Like, what? Why? I don't know. But so anyway, I don't know if you've used these before, but I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on it. It looks like it's a really well-made airbrush, but again, it's filled with paint, so I'm gonna have to really clean it. And it looks like everything's in there. I mean, yeah. So it used to be a really high-end brand. I mean, he's got some that are $300-$400. There's one there for $600. But like every brand, there's lineups. There's the cheap ones, and then there's the good ones. So I don't know if this is an entry-level one or if it's a really nice one, but it looks a lot nicer than some of my more expensive ones. So hopefully that came up because he didn't want much money for it. I kind of feel bad, actually.
My only conclusion is that it has to be a Sith Lord. Impossible. The Sith have been extinct for a millennia. Oh, except for that, yeah, that one time. My bad. This is what I'm talking about, people. Okay. And we were talking about the female custodies, right? Oh, what's the problem? They retcon the lore all the time. We're talking about Star Wars, the Acolyte. Oh, what's the problem? They retcon the lore all the time. Except for we go out, we buy the comic books, we buy the novels, and you read them, and you get invested in it. Oh, it's a cool story. And then, Disney buys Lucasfilm and gets rid of Legends, so throw all that in the crapper. Anyway, I've heard the argument, like if you read a good story, does it really matter if it's like part of a real universe or not? But at the same time, the people that are creating this stuff, you're basically sending a message that, like, don't get invested in any of this crap. It's all just tall tales. DC does that a lot. They do a lot of the multiverse stuff, and a lot of the books will even say, like, it's basically like what if stuff. And I don't know, I guess that's kind of cool, but you sort of read it kind of going into it knowing that, oh, this isn't like part of the real thing. And I don't know, we spend a lot of money on this crap, and it's, I guess in the end it really doesn't matter. If you read a book and it's a good book, it's still a good book. Does it? But I don't know. I'm talking about episode 5 of The Acolyte. In case you're wondering, now I'm not going to spend money on Disney Plus, so I've been watching the reviews, and I've pieced the episode together, and I will say, and finally they showed some action. The choreography looks pretty good. Okay, we keep the average dude interested, casual. But any real fan that's been into the lore and knows the story, it's probably going to make you pull your hair out, because it's so blatantly disrespectful to everything George Lucas did. And I don't know, it seems like as the story goes on, they do kind of tie things up, so I guess I'll hold out to see where it goes. But anyway, I don't even want to talk about Star Wars. I wish I wouldn't have watched that this morning because it's going to derail this video. Here I'm cleaning that airbrush out, I got 4 different airbrushes, and I would say 3 of them are pretty good brands, including this one here, Iwata. It's actually a highly rated brand, although this is one of their cheaper entries. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to test them all head to head, and I'm going to draw some real nice thick lines, and I'm going to draw some really, really fine ones. And I'm going to see which one's the best. I don't have anything to airbrush right this second. I'm in the middle of like a couple of little projects, and so I didn't test the airbrush out yet. But I will be doing a head-to-head comparison of the brands that I do have. And what's cool about the airbrushes I have is that all of them are relatively inexpensive, and they all work pretty well. So if you're looking to get into the hobby, I can recommend airbrushes that are inexpensive. I'm painting my Outriders. Continued. I didn't really make a whole lot of progress, unfortunately. I'm using what's called paint markers. Now, I don't know if you guys have seen these before. These are Gundam markers. They're kind of expensive. They're like $20 for basic red, black, blue, green, yellow, and then like a silver. And then I have like, I subsequently went out and bought like all the paint markers that are available at Michael's, and they're all acrylic. Some of them are oil based. You got to be really careful. Do not mix oil based with acrylic unless they're completely dry, because you will get really bad results. And if any of the acrylic paints get on the oil paint's felt tip, it gums it up and the marker will stop working. But the point is these can be a nice shortcut for people, especially when you're trying to do like edge detailing and things of that nature. I think these are awesome. They're a big time saver, and they're kind of fun to use. They're obviously easy to clean up. There's advantages and disadvantages to everything. I think the brushes are, you have better control of the thickness of the paint. You know, you're obviously mixing the colors, so with markers, it's kind of what you see is what you get. But if you have a good selection of colors, and I do, I've got just about every color you can think of, including some really, really nice metallics like gold. I have chrome. Chrome is neat because it's actually like chrome plating. I have the gold looks like a gold leaf when it's painted. The silvers are really nice. Really awesome for highlighting, for sure. You can get in there and do some pretty good detail with them, and they dry really fast. It's almost kind of like cheating for some things, but you know, there's a level of fine detail you're just not going to get unless you use a brush. So it's kind of one of those things, like, why not have every tool available to you? And I only recently found out about these paint markers, so I would highly suggest picking them up and trying them out. They're not super expensive, about the same price as acrylic paint, and it might be something that will help you be a better hobbyist. And it's just easy to use. And I don't see a lot of when watching YouTube paint tutorials, I don't see a whole lot of I don't see any channels using paint markers. And I've been using them all the models that I have, that I've presented on this page, have the use of paint marker in them. Is that good or bad? I don't know. You guys can decide that, but I like them, and I think they're awesome. And you know, I obviously still use the brush for a lot of stuff, but yeah, paint markers can be a huge, huge time saver. Watching a video this morning while I'm, you know, painting my figurines or doing whatever, and it's about how Gen Z, it's Asmondgold, he's reacting to a video about how Gen Z doesn't want to work anymore. And kind of went down that rabbit hole. I feel bad for the younger generations, because they're being sold some nonsense. You know, I can understand why you would, why I don't want to work. Honestly, I get up, go to work. It's hot. It's really hot. But you know, got a family to support. You trade your time for money. No, they're up there. The problem is you guys are being sold lies. You know, I've lived through 3 different recessions that I can think, 3 major ones. They had this one, they had back in 2008 when the housing market crashed. It was at 07, 08. There was one before that, or right after the Gulf War, right before Bill Clinton took office. the big thing I've noticed about this one is that it seems like it's being done on purpose. Before, the recessions were like a byproduct. You had the George Bush Senior in the Gulf War, and then Bill Clinton took office, and we had one of the best economies we ever had, and then the housing market bubble as a result of some of those policies they put in place. We rode that wave, and that was a really bad crash. A lot of people lost their butts on that one. I mean, that was really bad. Almost everybody I knew that had their own home, was a new home buyer, lost their home, and that sucks, man. That's a real bummer. But a lot of those people were in really, really, really bad financial deals, and the banks were just giving loans out to anybody. I mean, you guys know the story, how they were pretty much giving loans to anyone, and then repackaging those and selling them as securities. And then, there was just eventually that was going to fail because those securities were built on people that couldn't, were in debt. They sold debt. They wrapped debt up as securities, and they, man, what a Ponzi scheme. What's different about this recession is it feels very much intentional. You see all this stuff about this new world order, Karl Schwarz, and they want to make a one world currency. They want to make a digital currency, and there's this push for this one world government, and the Pope's trying to do a one world religion, and there's a lot of biblical implications if you read into that. But I mean, even if that's not the case, there is definitely a push towards unifying everything. And is that good or bad? I feel like globalism's bad, I think. But I mean, okay, so there's good and bad with everything. I'm not an economist. The reason why we have a global economy now is because of George Bush Sr. and the policies he put in place. And it's interesting because they say they don't want America to police the world. They're sick of us being out there. Why are we always constantly fighting this world? But what they didn't teach anybody or tell anybody is that the United States, basically, if it wasn't for us policing the shipping lanes, there would be no free trade. That whole thing about Somalia piracy, where they were just taking, over cargo ships. That's what it would be if the Navy wasn't out there patrolling keeping the oceans free for commerce. So if America pulls out of that, we lose globalism, basically. And that's what they're looking at. That's why they're building up Mexico as the new China as far as trade partners go. But in order to build that infrastructure, it takes like 5 years. So Mexico is poised to be, the next economic power. They're being built up to be our next best trade partner because they've got a workforce that's more expensive than China, but they're way more skilled. What they don't have is the infrastructure, so that takes a few years to build up. So, if we stop trade with China right now, cut it off completely, all that stuff that you have at your fingertips, that all goes bye-bye. If the United States pulls out of policing the world, all that trade goes away, and we're back to, like, if you don't produce it, you don't have it. You know what I mean? But nobody knows that. I've had a little inside information, known that for a long time. What always blew me away wasn't that what we were doing, it's the fact that they wouldn't tell the truth about it. They're always trying to sell like for us to be overseas, it's got to be some like altruistic, lie about how we're, freedom and democracy. And it's like, no, we're basically protecting our economy. That's all it is. And you could say oil, but it's way more than oil, way more. Oil's a big one though, man. I mean, yeah, obviously. And all these people that want to get rid of oil, they want to get rid of fossil fuels. Like, they don't understand, like, almost 90% of everything that we consume is oil-based, from plastics to pharmaceuticals. Everything. There's oil in everything. When they distill that, it turns it into a whole bunch of byproducts. And gas is a tiny percentage of that. You get rid of oil, you get rid of Western civilization. Plain and simple. We're back in the dark ages. We have to start whaling again so we can keep the lights on. You know what I mean? But they don't teach anybody this stuff. So they're out there, throwing orange paint on the Mona Lisa and telling you to buy a Tesla. It's like, it's not that simple. Man, like, watching these arguments online about, like, how you're trying to explain to a leftist that electric cars have a much higher carbon footprint than gas overall because of the rape of the earth that has to happen to make batteries. But it just doesn't resonate with them, because if they don't see it, if they're not doing it themselves, it doesn't happen. And those are the same people that think if they buy an electric car, because they aren't personally using gas, none of that mining that goes on in China matters. If America goes 100% electric and green across the board, it still is only a dent in all the pollution that China's putting out. And then if we can't get them to play ball, what is the point? Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't be cleaner or greener or care about the earth. No, but you're not fixing the problem. It's just like everything else you do. It's pandering. It's trying to appear good while being evil. You know what I mean? It's all about, like, as long as I look good and I sound good, I could be a total piece of crap, rape the earth. And as long as it's not me personally doing it, then it's just not happening. That's solipsism. It's you believing that you're the center of the universe and nothing outside of you exists. So as long as you're not dropping cigarette butts as when you're walking down the street, there's no pollution. And you're going to police everybody else. You're going to go and yell at the guy who threw a cup at the garbage can, but he missed and he didn't go pick it up. You're going to be the moral police, telling the rest of us how we need to live so that we can save the planet. But then when we bring up, like, what the major contributing factors, you're just like, nah, iPhone, slave labor, China, they need to pay fast food workers $20 an hour. I don't know, hypocrisy much. Like, it's just that's why, like, every time I watch these debates, it's like I feel like I'm gonna have an aneurysm, because it's like, don't they educate anybody anymore? What was the point I was trying to make? Oh yeah, younger generations don't want to work anymore, and I could see that. I could see why, because, like, for the first time, it feels like what they're doing to the economy is on purpose. The policies that they're putting in place. Like, we have economists, we have experts, and they have to know that every time they print another $1 trillion and distribute it to the world and not give a penny of it to the people in this country, that, of course, adding another $1 trillion to the pool of money that's available is going to inflate it. And people, I asked the question, it's like, all that money that goes overseas, there was like $300 million that went to Pakistan for gender studies. Okay, they're like, why would you send that money to Pakistan? Like, it's like any other pyramid scheme or Ponzi scheme or laundering money. It has to be injected into the global economy in order for it to do anything to keep that dollar stable. Like, giving it to us doesn't help. It doesn't help what they're trying to do. They don't care about you personally. They care about the power of the dollar, and that means that they got to get that money out there in the world. So that means they're going to find any reason they can to give that money to any country they can, and that includes, like, gender studies for Pakistan. It's like, that money's got to get out there, otherwise it can't do its job. So it's really not about, think of it like this: anything they say that you're printing money to spend it on is bullshit. If I was an honest politician, I would look at you in the eye and say, hey, I need to print $1 trillion and we need to get it out there and disperse it amongst these countries and keep the economy going. Because we got to keep the dollar strong. Straight up. That would be the reason why I did all this lying about the Inflation Reduction Act, which had nothing to do at all with reducing inflation, but it had a lot to do with gender politics, oddly enough. And that's the other thing they do, is when they make these bills that sound great, there's like one page about the actual name of the bill, and then there's a million pages about every other policy that they want to shoehorn into it and pass as law. It's so, oh man, it's just like our government is just so full of crap. It blows me away, you know. But yeah, so I can see where it seems really futile for, you know, anybody in the job market now. And like this whole minimum wage hike in California, where what did they go? They bumped up fast food pay to $20 an hour. That's awesome if you work fast food, but what did it really do? It raised the prices of fast food, and it eliminated like half the jobs. Now everybody's going to order robots. You know, instead of, hey, may I take your order? It's, hey, order here. You know what I mean? So what did you think was going to happen? And then again, the argument's like, well, but the people that are working are making $20 an hour. How selfish and short-sighted is that? I never understood the argument anyways, because these people talked as if a fast food job was anything but transitory. Like, I just, when I was younger, I worked at Wendy's and what was it, Blockbuster Video, and I worked at a grocery store bagging groceries, and never once did I think, well, this is going to be where I retire. They sure aren't paying me enough to live. No, I made minimum wage, and like I would take that money and we'd all pull it together and go partying on the weekends. That's what we did. Like, that wasn't supposed to support you and your family. And they're like, well, what about people that have to work those jobs to support their family? Okay, like, first of all, that's sad. That really is. If that's your level of education and that is all you're capable of doing, that's very, very sad. But I understand. I had to start out as a laborer when I got into construction, you know, pushing a broom. I get it. But you acquire skills, hopefully. Like, okay, that whole thing about personal responsibility, you know, like, you hate it when conservatives say, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You know what that means? It means as much as it sucks to lose out on your younger years because you had kids too early and you're a single mom and you don't get to party on the weekends because you have a kid or kids, it means, yeah, you might have to do some continuing education to make yourself more valuable, or marry a man with a good job, but they sold you on the lie that you could be a girl boss and do it yourself, and you should divorce that loser because he's not making you happy, and now you're a single mom and you have to work some crappy job, and the only way to get continuing education is to work these huge, you know, work your whole day and then go to school at night. And it's just like, you know, I get it, man. It's like, it's a tough situation that they've sold America and put them in. And it's all, I don't know, it's just almost like they want to keep people poor. The whole lie that we have been sold growing up, it sucks. It sucks to see the fruit of all of the predictions that were made in the late 90s, early 2000s, where they said this is what's going to happen and nobody believed them. You know, for a while there, the government was basically paying women to have kids, and they still are to some degree, but you know, it's one of those things where you can't tax your way to prosperity. There's been no nation ever that's ever existed that was able to tax itself to being prosperous. And the money has to come from people that produce. So the less people that work thinking, I'm just going to live off the government, screw it. Somebody's got to work in order to make that money to pay you. You know, so the less people we have working. And then the other argument I hear is like, well, it's not fair if you could just sit at home and do nothing. Like, should I have to go to work? Well, I don't know. Do you want to better your life, or is that what you're aspiring to be? What his level of success is, if you do live off of entitlements, if you live off the state, if you live off of disability, that's your life. That's as good as it gets. You're not going to get a raise, or if you might get a cost of living increase or whatever, and maybe you can do some work under the table, make a few bucks. Maybe you can be a drug dealer. I don't know. There's creative ways of generating income, but it's still work. Just because it's not a job doesn't mean it ain't work. You know what I mean? But that's all you. So if that's your ambition, if that's all you want out of life, is to just live off the government, and you know, we have this idealized idea of, right before I left my parents' house, I did some basic cost of living math, and I was looking at rooms to rent for, at the time, like $200 to $400. Sweet, I make that working fast food. And then I'm looking, thinking, like, what are you gonna do for food? Well, I'm gonna need another $100 or whatever. And then I work at Wendy's, so I could just load up on cheeseburgers. And there you go, there's my food situation. So I got that all planned out. Sweet, things are looking up. Transportation, I look through used cars, and I'd see all these deals where it's like $0 down, and I'm like, I get a car easy. Yeah, well, you can see where the naivety starting to creep in. Like, I had this idea that I could just move out of my parents' house and just live like a king for a few $100 a month. And then I moved out of my parents' house and realized that things aren't that easy. Like, to get that $0 down car, it required that thing called credit. And they usually wanted a down payment. Like, all those ads were bullshit. Like, just to get you in there so you could, so they could sell you something. Oh, rent, I didn't think about utilities, and there's all the hidden costs, all of that stuff. There's just so much that our minds can't think about because we don't have the context of the experience of what it's like to live in the real world by ourselves, unassisted, without help. And the other thing is that the unassisted part, like, a lot of us don't realize, like, yeah, sometimes you got to team up, you got to get roommates. What a bunch of us did is we all pulled up and we got a house together. People they want the standard of living that they think they're entitled to, which is like, I want to live alone in my own place and be able to pay my bills. And they don't realize, like, everywhere else in the world, people have to live together. The families stay together. They all support each other. Like, it is a luxury in America to be able to live on your own in your own home. And it takes a lot of work, and there's a lot of hidden costs. And like, even we've taken on roommates here, and I don't know. And then these people, they want to live in certain areas they can't afford, but they don't want to move anywhere else because it's just not as nice as this part of town. I haven't watched. That's part of the video I was watching. It's just a lot of entitled. You could just tell these people have no real world experience, and they've lived a very sheltered life where everything was provided for them. And they just don't understand the context of struggle, because I don't even think their parents, who worked really hard to put them in those positions, probably weren't the type to talk about their work when they came home. They didn't tell anybody how crappy their day was or how hard work was. They were probably like, hey, how was work, Dad? It was fine. If Dad was even around, or they lived in single parent homes. And they get, a lot of the money came from child support of the state, and it's like the context is all screwed up. Nobody knows how to be successful, and they're not teaching anything anymore. They're not preparing anyone for the real world. So how could you be anything but disillusioned when you get dumped into the workforce, and you find out, that stupid gender studies degree you just put yourself into $100,000 worth of debt for won't land you anywhere. Like, what job can you get with those crap degrees that everybody's getting in the humanities? Nothing. It's like, go down to the union, sign up, and become a construction worker. And you scoff at that idea, but within 4 years, you could be making six figures. I don't know what to tell you. Learn to code. I heard that one. And there's actually something to that, but I understand why it's also insulting. Do you even know how to code? Yes, I do. I knew how to code before I became a construction worker. What does that tell you? I don't know, man. The world's screwed up, but what it really needs is a dose of realism. Like, you need people to be honest, and you need to teach our kids how the real world is, and set them up for success. I don't know why we're so latched onto this path of success being graduate high school, go to college. Is university even the best pathway to success anymore? It seems like all we're doing is cranking out ideologues that they're ideologically possessed leftists that want to burn the world down. Used to be, even me, when we were younger, we were more liberal. We wanted to change the world. And then as we got older, we grew out of that because we realized, like, all that stuff that we have to redistribute and share with everybody is ours. and we work really hard for it. And you can't have my stuff. You get more conservative as you get older. But that apparently isn't happening. Oh. The acolyte. I was using the TV as a backlight. That's a bummer. Well, that was a rant. I didn't even plan on talking about this, but watching that video, it just really pissed me off. It's like, are we that naive? Is that where we are? But that's where we are. Hey, but here's the thing. It's not that bad. I'm telling you. You guys get a job. Make some progress. Work as hard as you can. Don't look at it as like, I have to do this crap job for pay and I don't want to, so I'm only going to do the bare minimum and I'm not going to bring any passion to it because it's not what I want to do for a living. It sucks. No, bring some passion and think of it like, how can I make this better? How can I make it better for my employer and how can they make it better for me? It becomes a transaction. Like I'm telling my employer, I want this amount of money because this is what I can do for you and that's why you should pay me. Not be, you know what I mean? And then they're going to expect me to do that. And then if I do what I said I was going to do, I can then negotiate for more money. Along the way, we require more skills. We level up, if you will. And it does take time. It doesn't happen overnight. But after a while, we get to, negotiate our salaries instead of walk in and accept whatever it is they offer us. And it gets better. It really does. And the other thing we also need to do is look to each other more. Like sometimes, yeah, especially you younger kids, you got to team up. You might have to get a couple roommates. But you know what? I remember having some of the best times of my life living with 4 dudes in a 2,000 square foot house, and everybody had their own bedroom, and it was pretty cool, man. I like living there. That was a blast. You get in your 40s and you're still doing that. There's a problem there. You might be a little bit of a late bloomer. Everything in its due time, right? Like, do not give into cynicism. The world's what you make of it. It's, once you become cynical, it's over. There's no chance of you exacting any joy from this life once you become cynical. You gotta maintain that positive outlook because the joy is in the journey, it's not the destination. If I get $1 million, I'll be happy. If I get a sports car, I'll be happy. No, you won't. You will when you get it for a minute, and you might when you drive it, but it will not, won't make you happy. But along the way, almost the thought of getting the sports car has more meaning than the sports car itself, It's, don't miss the journey. It's all in the journey. The people we meet, the relationships we cultivate, the people we're going to settle down with, the families that we make and love us in return, the people whose lives we affect. That's all in the journey and not the destination. And things rarely ever turned out the way I had them planned in my head anyways. So, tomorrow's promised to nobody. Sometimes you gotta kick at the darkness until it bleeds daylight. Alright. I love you guys. I will see you on the battlefield.